this is Michael Melfi. I'm a partner with Taylor English, and today I'm joined by Jonathan Wilson to discuss the Corporate Transparency Act. And I'm looking forward to having this conversation because to some, they've never heard the Corporate Transparency Act, which is a federal regulation that was recently passed that talks about what every company that exists or may come into existence may need to do around some federal reporting around their beneficial ownership. And so, Jonathan, with that, I'd love to, before we dive in, do you mind just sharing a little bit about yourself, about your background, and how you got into this Corporate Transparency Act?
Sure. So, well, Michael, like you, I'm a corporate lawyer. I'm here at the Taylor English Law Firm in Atlanta, and I've been living in Atlanta now for about 31 years. Went to college at William & Mary and law school at George Washington University, and spent the first decade or so of my practice in private practice with different law firms in Atlanta. I spent a few years in-house, two different public companies where I was the general counsel. One of those was web.com, the website hosting company. And then in 2009, I rejoined with Mark Taylor, the very first lawyer I ever met when I moved to Atlanta, who was just getting this Taylor English law firm started. And I've been here then since 2009. And what was interesting to me about the Corporate Transparency Act is, it was adopted in December of 2020. It was shortly after the 2020 presidential election. We had all kinds of controversy and dispute going on about the election. We had the events of January 6th coming up in just a few days. And the fanfare that might ordinarily have gone along with a congressional act like the Corporate Transparency Act simply got swallowed up in all the media noise. So no one was really aware of this new law. And when I started reading about it in January after it was passed, I came to realize that it was really going to involve a sea change in the way we corporate lawyers interact with our client.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate it. I think that's a great way to kick off because I think a lot of people out there may have not had interaction with this or even known because of some of the reasons you said. Do you mind just taking a few minutes for those who don't know to talk about what is the Corporate Transparency Act and exactly what that means, how it came to be?
Absolutely. So the Corporate Transparency Act is an attempt by the government to collect more information about private companies. And the reason why government wants more information is to fight money laundering. If you think about money laundering, it's been called the life's blood of organized crime. If you are an organized crime entity, your biggest problem is finding a way to take your cash and inserting it into the financial system in a way that won't disclose the fact that you've been engaged in illegal activity. Remember, Al Capone never got convicted of murder, never got convicted of bootlegging. He was convicted for not paying his taxes. And that has been the story of just about every criminal organization since then. So if you are a person who is trying to engage in money laundering, how do you do it? Well, you create a bunch of corporations and you have them all open bank accounts. You move the money from one account to the other, and then you dissolve the corporations and close the accounts. Months later, if the government is on your tail, is trying to figure out where the money came from, your final corporation will say, well, we got the money because of consulting services we earned to this corporation over here. And when government goes to that corporation over there to figure out what it was, it's been dissolved. No one knows who stood behind it. The bank account has been closed. There's literally nobody to ask. And that's how organized crime launders money. So in Europe, for many years now, it's been the practice that every corporation that gets created has some sort of public filing obligation. So that corporation XYZ has to tell some government agency that our beneficial owners are this person, this person, and this person, and their driver's license is this, and their home residence is this, and all this information gets filed with the government. So if the government wants to find out who the individuals are behind a corporation, it simply goes to that public registry. We've never had such a public registry in the United States. Our corporations have been anonymous. Well, the Corporate Transparency Act is going to change that. Corporate anonymity will be dead when the Corporate Transparency Act is finally implemented.
First, obviously we're not promoting organized crime or money laundering. The whole reason we're talking about this is to explain the importance of the Corporate Transparency Act. But in all seriousness, that definitely changes how, often people have strategy. I want to file in this state or a different state simply because of the anonymity. That goes away now with this, correct?
That's right. There will be no more anonymity. The Corporate Transparency Act covers any company that is formed by the filing of a document with the Secretary of State or with another organizational, another governmental entity. So that would include corporations, limited partnerships, limited liability companies, and in some states, general partnerships. There are a few states where you can create a general partnership without filing a document. Those, for the time being, are not covered by the Corporate Transparency Act. But all those other entities, which are 99.9% of the types of companies that you and I create every day as corporate lawyers, Michael, those are all going to be covered by this new law.
Gotcha. And I guess the next thing I would ask you is, okay, so now we have to report. What does this federal reporting requirements look like? What information is going to need to be provided?
Exactly. And that's really where the rubber hits the road. So for every company, it needs to include in its report identifying information about the company applicant and every beneficial owner. Okay. The company applicant is the individual who signed the articles of incorporation to form the entity. Now, for my clients, that's usually me. And I did a search the other day. I'm connected to about 350 companies here in the state of Georgia where I have signed their articles. So those 350 companies, when the time comes, are going to come to me asking me for my data to be included in their report. So that's the company applicant. There's then the beneficial owners. Okay. Beneficial owner is any person who owns 25% or more of the company, or any person who has substantial control. And substantial control is defined as any senior officer, any member of the board of directors, or any other person who has the ability to exercise influence over the decision-making of the company. So obviously, if you're in a corporation, your board's covered. Your CEO and CFO are covered. Think about an LLC that has an operating agreement, and you have that paragraph that says, except with the consent of the such and such investors, the manager can't do any of the following things. Well, that's influence over decision-making. So the such and such investors who have the veto power, each of those investors are also going to be beneficial owners of that LLC. So in some cases, there might only be 2 beneficial owners of a company. In others, there could be several dozen. It'll be a case-by-case basis, and lawyers are going to have to be involved giving advice to their clients as to who needs to be included in the report.
So when we're talking about this, we're not just talking about a business owner or a founder or even an investor. We're also talking about the attorneys that help organize those entities as well. This information could span anyone who's has their fingerprints on the entity, so to say.
That's exactly right. Right. I mean, just think, Michael, how many times have you signed the articles of organization of an LLC that you have then filed? It could be probably hundreds.
So let me ask you this. So now this is coming into existence, and we're all going to have to start complying with it. How does a business manage this? How does someone navigate this Corporate Transparency Act compliance and making sure they're doing the reporting? Is there somewhere they go or something they have to fill out?
That's just it. And I didn't cover the most dangerous part of this yet. So once you've identified your beneficial owners and your company applicant, you need to provide personally identifiable information for each of those. And for each of those, that includes the full legal name, date of birth, home residential address, and a unique identifying number, which could be a driver's license or a passport number, and then an image of that file. So, Michael, your date of birth, home address, driver's license, photocopy of your driver's license, that's got to be included in the beneficial ownership reports of every company for whom you signed the articles of organization. Now, you ask me how our company is going to comply with this. To be honest, it's going to be really tough. It's going to be tough in several different directions. For lawyers like you and me, if your clients all called in tomorrow and said, give me your data, I would have to say, no, I'm not giving out that personal data to hundreds of clients and former clients. Likewise, if they all turned around and woke up tomorrow and they all started to email their stuff to you, what would we do? Most law firms don't have them to ingest that kind of data and keep it securely. If you email me a photocopy of your passport and I put it into our law firm's document management system, every lawyer, every paralegal, every staff person in our firm is going to have access to that data. You don't want that. So what I've done is I've formed this company, the FinCEN Report Company, that has developed a software solution to manage compliance.
For all the people who haven't ran off to try to figure out how to do this right now, I think the important part is to make sure they understand we have a little bit of time, I think, if I'm not mistaken, right? Isn't there a certain amount of time before this is going to go into effect? And then from that point forward, there's a period of time to be able to do the filings?
Sure. So the law exists today. It was passed in 2020, but nobody can go and actually file a report today until FinCEN, that bureau inside the U.S. Treasury Department, finalizes its regulations. They've done some draft regulations, and you can go out and read them, but they haven't legally taken effect yet. FinCEN hasn't told us when they will take effect. It could be a month from now. It could be by the end of this year, but somewhere in the next several months, it'll take effect. Once it takes effect, every company that exists before the regs take effect will have 1 year to get their first report done. Any company that is formed after the effective date of the regulations has only 14 calendar days to get the first report done.
Wow.
Right.
So this will become something that moving forward, this is just part of setting up an entity, just like some of the other things we do as corporate lawyers in setting up an entity.
That's right.
Okay.
In the old system, you would file the articles first and then figure out who's going to own what, who's going to invest what are our duties going to be. Can't do that anymore. Once this takes effect, we're going to have to figure out all that stuff first and then file the articles of incorporation last, because within a matter of days, we're going to have to file that beneficial ownership report with everybody's personal data.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. Well, Jonathan, I want to thank you so much. This has been, a very eye-opening, hopefully, for our listeners to learn more about this. And the Corporate Transparency Act is obviously something that's very important to business owners, lawyers, investors, and anyone who's involved in the beneficial ownership of an organization. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate the opportunity. Talk to you soon.
Great. Thank you. And on the next episode that we do, we're really enthusiastic to have Amanda Highland. She'll be joining us, and we're going to be talking all about NFTs and trademark issues, so some IP relevance there. So looking forward to you joining us on the next episode. Until the next time, I'm Michael Melfi, partner at Taylor English. Thanks for joining us.